Go. Oh no, I'm gonna start talking now. We're recording here. But he's always there. So again, these are, I don't see any other instructors except for our speaker for tonight, whom you're gonna get to meet here shortly, Sam Kieshnick. So he's the other urban biologist in our area, focusing more on the Dallas County east side. So he's a treat. You're gonna really enjoy him if you haven't already heard him speak. So those are our instructors. Now there are others that couldn't make it tonight, and you're gonna get to know them week by week. As far as and they bring so much to the table, and we have other Texas Parks and Wildlife staff members as well. So you're in good hands. And again, we're excited about this, committing our time to you and sharing our knowledge and experiences with you. So these are your instructors for this year's training class. All right. And just real quick, I'll be doing your aquatics. So I'll be in 2 weeks, I'll be doing the aquatics and the field trip. So that's kind of my role. But I love this organization and really love working with y'all and doing whatever we can to get you out in the field and spreading the word about how important our wildlife is. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sharon Hamilton, our president.
Okay, this doesn't work. Even if I do it 10 more times, it doesn't work. There. Oh wait, no, I got. Okay, hold on. Oh. Yes, I did. Welcome. Also, a lot of us have talked, or we saw each other at the open house. This is the only meeting we have here in the Botanic Gardens because we have this huge group, you guys, and then all these other hangers-on that are here. So you'll be out of the nature soon. If you need help getting there, ask. If you don't know what you're supposed to wear, ask. If you wonder if you're gonna get dumped in the water at the nature center, don't be nice to Brent. You know, those kinds of things. So I hope you enjoy it. We all want you to be here. So we're not out to haze. We joke a lot, but we're not out to, I don't think we do much hazing. There are there are several board members. Some of them are also mentors. So you may have met them already. In order of height.
I'm
starting with you, but you don't have to. Bill Collins is our past president, and a mentor.
Thank you. Oh, see, can you?
Mary Beth is going to sleep very well tonight because she got the books here and the name tags and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Mary Beth Lampy is our current vice president. Brent is a past president. Melinda, you already know. Debbie, would you raise your hand? Debbie Silson is our membership. And once you're going to be.
I don't know.
Debbie, I know you won't remember them all. But she has to make sure that your records get put into the.
Yeah, so get to know Debbie, please. Yes. Yeah.
And then once you're finished with training, all those kinds of records are only Debbie. Melinda gets to graduate you to membership. But I can't see. Peggy Carr is here. You're a mentor. Sandy Thornburg is on the board. She's hospitality. Josephine King is on the board. She's the best help anybody ever had. And if you have any native plant questions and you don't already have someone to go to, there's Josephine. Hester Schwartzer is a mentor and is a past president. See, some of us just can't leave. There are 3 past presidents here, right? They just can't leave. Dana Austin couldn't be here as a mentor. Lori Chernosky is a mentor. Morgan Shivers couldn't be here as a mentor. And Taylor Thorns, are you in here? There you are. That's what happens when your name is at the end of the alphabet. And Frank Keeney is our technology guru. We may make that his new title, technology guru. That sounds even better than master. Thank you guys, and I'm gonna stop talking. Thank you.
So you're gonna introduce David, or you're making him introduce himself? Okay. The man needs no introduction.
That's right. And before I introduce our speaker, one reminder, next week, as Sharon said, we'll be starting our trainings at the Fort Worth Nature Center and Refuge. I want to throw this out real quick. There's a lot of construction going on in Lake Worth on Jacksboro Highway. So be very mindful of that. If you have a concern with that, you want to know some alternate back road ways to get out there, you can always call us and or email, and we can try to help you with that. But definitely keep that in mind. It's not fun. So, all right. So I want to turn it over to our speaker tonight, a good friend of many organizations around here, Sam Kieshnick. Sam Kieshnick works with Texas Parks and Wildlife as an urban biologist, and he's worn many hats. He's worked at Weatherford College, where he taught there. He worked at the Nature Center. He worked at Britt, and he is so committed to sharing his passion about the outdoor world and how we are connected with it. And tonight he's going to talk to you a little bit about the history of naturalists. We thought about putting this first, so you can kind of like, what is a naturalist? Because sometimes if you Google it, you may not, you're like, oh, I don't want to be a naturalist. And it's like, yeah, we wear clothes, okay? We wear clothes, I promise, okay? But talk about the history of a naturalist, what it is, and this is the legacy you're about to get involved in. And he's going to tell you a little bit about that. And iNaturalist, and iNaturalist, he's the of all iNaturalists right here. So yeah, exactly. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to Sam Kieshnick and talk about naturalists. All right.
Okay, first things first, we are too spread out. So
If you're sitting over here, how about you scoot over a little bit over here? If you're sitting over here, how about you scoot a little bit over here? Ready on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, go. Scoot. You want to get a little closer.
good, thank you. That's a little bit better for me. I'm sorry, I need that. So it is great. Goodness gracious, it is great to see all of you here tonight. Welcome to a neat community, to a neat program, to just a really cool, one of my favorite programs, actually. Oh my goodness gracious, let's see if I can do this right. So you're going to hear it a lot. Oh boy. There we go. You're going to hear it a lot throughout the program. You know, the Master Naturalist program was not created for a group of bulk labor. It wasn't created for, inmate community service. It wasn't created for that. Down in San Antonio, when the Master Naturalist program first started, they wanted to create an organization, a core of well-informed, trained volunteers to provide service. I know you can read, but let's just read this together here. As a matter of fact, let's read it out loud together. Let's read it out loud together. I'll go slow. So the mission of the Texas Master Naturalist, are you ready? We're going to start with the word to. Ready? Okay. It is to develop a core of well-informed volunteers to provide education, outreach, and service dedicated to the beneficial management of natural resources and natural areas within their communities for the state of Texas. And good job reading. Yeah. It's gonna be full of activities tonight like this. And on behalf of the state of Texas, I know you can hear me, but I want you to listen. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I am serious as a judge when I say thank you. We need you. We need you now arguably more than ever, we need you now. Thank you. Thank you so much for being part of this program. And I don't know if when you signed up for the Master Naturalist program, if the term kind of intimidated you. Master Naturalist. I am going to be an expert, the expert, a master of nature. Well, the master of Master Naturalist just means dedicated. It is a dedicated volunteer. That's what the master of Master Naturalist means. Here's something that we're facing. I would argue that one of the biggest threats to nature right now, there's a lot, holy moly. There's urbanization, there's loss of habitat, there's invasive species, all of these things that are pretty rough for nature, climate change. All of these things are severe threats. One of the ones that gets to the hearts and minds is apathy. Apathy is a huge threat to nature. And this apathy didn't just come about, but it's been developing. Part of it is this term, nature deficit disorder. This term, coined by Richard Louv, Last Child in the Woods, a great book. He mentions a couple of these studies. Nature Conservancy did a study looking at kids between the age of 13 and 18. Found out that 80% were uncomfortable outside. May I ask the group a question? How many of you grew up outside? You played outside. You played outside as a kid. The truth of the matter, if you're raising your hands, you're pretty lucky. You're pretty dang fortunate. One of the places where I used to work for the city of Mansfield, Oliver Nature Park, Elmer Oliver Nature Park. I couldn't even remember the full name of it. This nature park. And sometimes we would get kids out there, and not necessarily any inner city kids, but kids that weren't really too familiar with nature. What do you think their first questions were when they got outside? Anybody? I won't make fun. Are there bears? Are there lions? Are there tigers? What else? When can we go back? It's hot. It's hot. Okay. Any other questions that you think? Let's say that one more time. Am I going to get dirty? Sure. And I can't blame them for these questions, because if you're uncomfortable somewhere, you're wondering, when can I get home? You're wondering, what's scary out here? You're wondering, is this going to mess up my shoes? Yeah, my Nikes. 80% felt uncomfortable outdoors, and it makes sense. If they don't have either a natural area close or a way to get to that natural area, it makes sense that they are uncomfortable outside. Another study done in the late 90s looked at kids between the ages of 8 and 18, found out that between 81 and 97, the outside unstructured play was down by 50%. 30 minutes of unstructured outside play, 7 hours of electronic screen time. Before we throw stones, how close are you to your device? For me, it's like a gunslinger. Like I'll feel a little vibration and I'm ready to go. We grow up with these devices. And I mentioned this study done in the late 90s because these kids are grown-ups now. These are the ones that are voting on policy, that are doing all sorts of stuff, making these big decisions. So nature deficit disorder is something that we will tackle. We will tackle that as a group, as an organization. You will also get questions. Your friends, your neighbors, your family, strangers will find out that you're a master naturalist. And they will say, you're a master naturalist, right? So what's the gestation period of a raccoon? They're going to come up with these questions that are going to be challenging. What's the gestation period of a raccoon? But you're a master naturalist, right? There are 3 words that take courage to say. 3 words that take courage to say. Those, anybody know those words? Just so that we know what it feels like. Going over our tongues, those 3 words, we're going to say that together as a group, okay? So the 3 words are, I don't know. Okay, those are the 3 words. On the count of three, just so that we know what it feels like, let's say I don't know together. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I don't know. A few mouths I didn't see moving. One more time, just so that we know what it feels like. Ready? On the count of three. 1, 2, 3. I don't know. It's okay. It is okay if you don't know the gestation period of a raccoon. It's okay. But there's something that separates a master naturalist from a normal person. Like it or not, you are no longer normal. A normal person would say, I don't know. Let me ask Siri. I don't know. Let me look this up real quick. I don't know. Let me find the answer. Or I don't know by. A master naturalist says, with honesty, not necessarily hopefully, but maybe with honesty, I don't know. But how many of you have ever seen a raccoon before? Anybody seen a raccoon? How many of you have been camping and a raccoon found its way into your stuff? Bob, it's happened before. They have little fingers that are adapted to prying open freshwater mussels, to prying open bivalves. So is a Tupperware lid an issue for a raccoon? No way. Or bananas? Exactly right. They sort of peel them, just lovely peeling them. So what a master naturalist does says, I don't know, but develops a relationship with the person asking that question. This is what's different about us. We may not know, but I would argue, and let me just throw some reality at you. Siri knows more right now than you will ever learn. She knows more based on your internet reception. She knows more than you will ever learn in your lifetime. The master of master naturalist does not mean expert. It means dedicated volunteer. It means someone that cares. Siri doesn't care. You know, she gives the illusion of caring about me. Sometimes when I have no one else to talk to, I talk to Siri. You know, hey, Siri, tell me a joke. You know, I do this all the time. Good, she didn't read that. I do that all the time. It sounds like she cares about me, but the reality is she doesn't care. She just provides that information. A master naturalist says, I don't know what the gestation period of raccoon is, but raccoons are pretty cool, aren't they? They are really, really interesting. That relationship develops with that person asking the question, and you care about the answer. I forgot to ask the board if I could do this. I think I can. I think it's okay. I'm going to do something real quick. So eyes up here. Ready? I curse you. I place a curse upon you that when you get a question like, what is the gestation period of a raccoon? You won't be able to sleep that night until you find out the gestation period of a raccoon. Did anybody look it up for me yet? What is it, Marcy? It's a couple months. It's a couple months. Good. So we can sleep soundly tonight. But the next time you get a question that you don't know the answer to, you can't sleep until you find 62, 63, depends on the day. Yeah. So yeah, you're going to be up at night until you find out the answer. So I mean, in all sincerity, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It does take courage to say, I don't know, but it's okay. It is okay. Find out that answer. Find out that answer later on. So tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about what a naturalist is. I don't have a book in front of me. Have y'all had the books for a while? 25 minutes or so? The books are good. May I borrow yours real quick? Well, I'm on stage. The book is quite good. It is quite good. It is crazy good. And with a lot of these topics that we're going to be addressing, we are scratching the surface of these topics. It gives you resources, lots of other resources that you can dig further into these subjects. But the reality is, we are just scratching the surface of this. One of the things that I love about the book is it is full of quotes. Anybody here like quotes? I love quotes. Good, I see some hands. I love quotes. And with a quote, you can interpret it however you want to. You can apply it to your lives. However, the book is full of quotes. And I challenge you, I dare you, I double dare you. chew on some of those quotes. When you read some of these quotes, chew on them a little bit. You know, by chewing on it, reading it slowly, that helps with the digestion process, that you can fully understand or apply those same sort of lessons to your life. Thank you. Very cool. I think you'll find a lot of use for it. So we're going to be tackling a couple of the units tonight. The first one is, what is a naturalist? And I like this. I think this is straight from the book. It's anyone who studies and appreciates objects or organisms in nature. The root word obviously is nature to naturalist. So even if it's a fleeting interest, how many of you, when you've been outside, you have walked by, let's go with a plant, and you don't know its name? Has that ever occurred to anyone here? Have you ever walked by a plant? Good, I even see some hands. You've walked by a plant and you see one, but you don't know its name. And if just for a moment, there's a spark of interest. Bob and I were talking earlier about dragonflies. Brent's going to talk about dragonflies in a little bit. That's the mascot of the Master Naturalist organization. Dragonflies are crazy cool. Bob, would you tell us about the experience you saw with dragonflies?
They have a pond here. We were looking down in the pond. There was a dragonfly, a brown dragonfly, scooping the water with its tail. And watching for a little bit, thinking he was drinking it, wasn't good. And I said, I think it's depositing the eggs. Yeah. Then very fast on the video saying,
Yeah. So that's what a naturalist does. A naturalist sees something and goes, that's sort of weird. I'll repeat that too, just in case for the people watching online. So Bob was watching a dragonfly. It was flinging its little tail into the water, actually flinging the eggs into the water. It's a dragonfly called a roseate skimmer. Really cool. Brent will talk about those later on. But that's what a naturalist does, even if it's a fleeting interest. Even if you're walking and you've got something big to go to and you see this cool little dragonfly, if just for a moment you have that interest, that's what a naturalist does. That is a naturalist. An interest, appreciation, just that engagement with nature, if but for a moment. Some people dedicate their lives to studying these things. They dedicate their life to the reproduction of dragonflies. Other people may spend a few minutes engaging with it. And here it is, the spectrum of time. You could devote your entire lifetime into studying the fertilization process of roseate skimmers, or what is the percentage of viable offspring that make it to the next generation of roseate skimmers. You could devote your entire life to this, or you could spend a lovely 15 minutes watching that dragonfly. Spectrum of time there on what a naturalist studies. I mentioned it earlier. This is good repetition. Repetition works. Repetition works. Repetition works. Repetition works. What works? How do you know that? I said it 4 times. So repetition, it works. Master of Master Naturalist does not mean expert. It means dedicated volunteer. It means someone that cares about this thing or about nature. So it does mean that. So as you maybe clarify it for folks when they asked you about the gestation period of raccoon, I thought you were an expert, say, well, I'm not, but I really like raccoons. Raccoons are pretty cool. It is a dedicated volunteer. And I'll talk about the volunteer stuff in a second as well. This guy actually is a marathoner, but he's done some really interesting things about how critters survive in different extremes. Super hot years, super cold years, some of those extremophiles that live in different climates. Bernheidrich, he says, and I don't mean to do this to patronize you, but whenever I'm reading a quote, I go slow. I go really slow. He says, he instilled in me the mind and values of a naturalist, to be open to all possibilities, to be a close and careful observer, to discipline my interpretation with facts, and to work hard at my passions so that they may bear fruit. This is what Bernd Hendrick calls a naturalist. Rachel Carson, you may be familiar. She says, naturalist are those who contemplate the beauty of earth and find reserves of strength that will endure as long as life lasts. Another quote from I'm comfortable that I could call this man totally a man crush. David Attenborough, an idol of mine. Goodness gracious. Just a magnificent person, really great person. If you don't know the face, you probably know the voice. He does the voice for so many nature documentaries. He says, it seems to me that the natural world is the greatest source of excitement, the greatest source of visual beauty, the greatest source of intellectual interest. It is the greatest source of so much in life that makes life worth living. Chew on some of these quotes. What does it mean to you? These folks are describing what they consider a naturalist, or what a naturalist loves, what a naturalist enjoys. Attenborough, Carson, Hendrick are definitely naturalists. In the book, Horace Burke talks about specifically the Texas naturalist. He says, dedication to a cause is an apt descriptor for the pioneer Texas naturalist. So let's look, isn't that a great photo? That's so awesome. Although I bet that blast of light that the old timey, it probably blinded that bird and maybe the man too. But the quote, but the point that he's bringing up is that's dedication to a cause. Dedication to a cause is an apt descriptor for the pioneer Texas naturalist. So let's look at some of the naturalists of the past. I'll start with one of my favorite ones. There's a great book called In Darwin's Shadow about this guy. This guy, if you've not heard of the name before, Alfred Russel Wallace, the book doesn't mention him. It sort of focuses more on Texas stuff, but I love talking about this guy. This guy is really incredible. He actually went a little crazy later in life, but they actually think he had a tropical parasite that caused him to go a little bit bonkers later in life. So, hey, that's the price you pay, I guess. He said, in all works on natural history, we constantly find details of the marvelous adaptations of animals to their food, their habits, and localities in which they are found. One of the things that I like about this guy is that he was not born into wealth. Have you heard of Darwin before? Have you heard of Charles Darwin before, Chuck? You've heard of this guy. A lot of people have heard of him. He was born into wealth. He could easily fund trips to the Galapagos. Alfred Russel Wallace could not. He had to work for that trip. And so what he would do is on one trip, he would collect specimens and then sell them to rich people to fund his next venture. So he was not born into wealth. He had to basically get money for these ventures. Really, really fascinating guy. I encourage you to learn some more about that one. Let's look at some of the Texas naturalists now. Gideon Lincecum. Anybody ever heard of him before? A few people have heard of him before. He says, an apt quote to write now, Texas would be a great invention if it rained a little more often. Pretty good. When he was writing back to the people of England or up north, that's probably what he would end his letters with. This guy was really, really interesting. There was kind of a colonial mentality in some of the early naturalists. What he did is he interacted with the indigenous quite a bit and learned from their ways, learned from their knowledge, learned from how they studied things and how they learned these things. He was a thorough and respectable researcher in spite of his lack of formal education. He was not well educated, at least through the school system, but he learned a lot from the indigenous folks. And He even wrote to Charles Darwin, wrote letters to Charles Darwin talking about these guys. Name it if you know it. Anybody know the name of this guy? Not an antlion. That's a good, say what? That's all right. That's all good. It's all good. Anybody know this one? A red ant. Sure, I'll accept it. Red ant. And I would have accepted ant too. Ant. Yes, these little guys. They are harvester ants is one of the common names for them. They move these different plants around. And when Gideon Litzkin was writing letters, that's funny. When he was writing letters with that ink, when he was writing the letters to Darwin, he talked about how these ants specialize on different types of plants. And close to the ant nest, you could see different species of plants around there. So there was a selective process that was going on through these. Not much of formal education, but still reached out and corresponded back and forth with Charles Darwin. Pretty cool. Oh no. This guy, Ferdinand Lindheimer. Anybody know the name before? Good, a few people, yeah. Lindheimer. One of the common names for this guy is the father of Texas botany, Ferdinand Lindheimer. When he was writing to folks up in at Asa Gray Herbarium, or I don't even know what it was used to be called, but at Missouri Botanical Garden or whatever, he said, send me the names soon so that I don't have to keep creating nicknames such as I have been using as an aid, especially for the grasses, for instance, narrow ear, panicle ear, long ear, twin ear. So he was creating these names for that. And Avon Burton just sent us an email. So Ferdinand Lindheimer, the father of Texas botany in the mid-1800s. He was a German immigrant, an avid botanist and collector. Another really interesting thing about this guy, he had his own printing press. So he had, he was a German immigrant and German communities in Texas, had his own printing press. And the joke is that he created that organization just so that he had the paper to press specimens. So just to have that newspaper so that he could go out and make more collections. Don't know how much truth there is to that, but he did actually sell some of his specimens to other botanists. $8 for 100 specimens. That's a hard day's work. That's a hard day's work, but got some good stuff. Another guy, Julian Reverchon. If you've been to Dallas, anybody been to Dallas before? Dallas, there's a place called Reverchon Park over there, named after this guy, actually after his father, a French immigrant. He did a lot of collecting throughout, not just Dallas-Fort Worth, but also throughout Texas. He talks about the Valley of the Llano. The Valley of the Llano, or Llano, is a paradise for the botanist, he mentions. He was part of this French society that wanted to create a utopia. They came over and said, let's create this amazing utopia of highly educated folks, but they only brought a couple farmers. Only a couple farmers, so it failed in a couple years because they were hungry. The doctors and the philosophers were kind of hungry there too. But there's still some La Reunion. Maybe you know those words from stuff in Dallas in the 1850s is when this formed, and it's when Julian Reverchon came over along with his father and was a botanist. Going to a little bit more common times, Jim Varnum. This is a guy as a master naturalist, a North Texas master naturalist, lived from 42 to 2016. He said, if you want to know the plant, you have to wait for a flower or a fruit. Patience. How much patience do you have on that plant that you walk by? Are you willing to go back when it flowers or fruits? If you want to know the plant, yeah, you need to do that. So Jim Varnum, a naturalist and an idol to several of us. He was very active in, actually, name it if you know it. Anybody know the flower on the left here? Trout lily, very good. Let it go. A trout lily, erythronium is the name of that. Also dogtooth violet. They have these bulbs that look a little bit like canine teeth. Fawn lily is another name for them because it has the ears of a little deer, perhaps. And then another one over there called the Hexalectris. I'll talk about that in a little bit. He was quite active in studying their phenology, studying these different plants. Some plants and animals are named after naturalists. So we have ones like this one over here. The common name is Texas star, but the scientific name is Lindheimeri texana. So named after Ferdinand Lindheimer. The one on the other side of the grass, that's Muhlenbergia, named after Muhlenberg, and then also Lindheimeri, named after Lindheimer. Now, there's some question on, are these really good descriptors of them? Because that grass is some guys' grass. Other plants have names that are more descriptors of what they are, even our Lindheimeri texana of Texas. So there's some debate on if that's valid or not. I think it's fun to learn some of these names because you learn the names, or you learn the people behind the names too. So you get some of that natural history and historians of who they were. We even have some animals that are named after people. This is a weird critter. You haven't had the mammal class yet. Tell me something weird about echidnas. Anybody know what's something weird? Say, lays eggs. This is an egg-laying mammal. Freaky, way freaky that they lay eggs along with the platypus as well. And then we have our big-eared bat, Raffinescus, has that common name named after a naturalist as well. This one I like to mention, Dahlia reversionii. Anybody heard of Dahlia reversionii before? One person, good to see you. So Dahlia reversionii, one person knows about this. It's a weird plant. The epicenter of this species' existence is in Weatherford. That's where it's found. It's found in 3 or 5 counties in the entire world, in the entire planet. Parker, Hood, and Wise. That's where this species is found. Nowhere else. Really, really crazy cool. Described, named after Reverchon, Julian Reverchon. He collected it for the first time, sent it to Asa Gray. Asa Gray named it Reverchonii after him. I was lucky enough to go to the top of Comanche Peak. The common name of this one is the Comanche Peak prairie clover, and went to probably the one location where Julian Reverchon was in 1890 to collect it. And if you'll forgive the back of my hairs for standing up, just reminiscing about that. He was doing that on horse and buggy. You know, you were up in a Jeep. So it was different, but still that connection that I had with naturalists of the past. Pretty dang cool. A naturalist has a life based on curiosity and passion. It's a life based on discovery. And I would argue that a lot of discovery comes from learning the names of things. David, if you know it, does anyone know the name of this little plant? It's a mustard, very good. So we know the family, it is a mustard. Anybody know this one? Brassicaceae. Love it when you talk like that. Yes, Brassicaceae. That's the Latin name for our mustards. This is one called shepherd's purse, is the common name of this guy. Shepherd's purse. Did you know? And I guarantee it's an early spring, winter little weed, but I guarantee when we look around anywhere, you'll see this guy. Did you know this is a semi-carnivorous plant? What this plant does is crazy. It drops its little seeds. So it is a mustard, so it has that lovely seed capsule there. It drops its seeds, and then it releases a couple compounds. One of them is a compound that attracts little nematodes. It attracts little microbes in the ground, in the soil. The other compound is an enzyme that breaks down the things that are attracted to it, and it uses those decomposing bodies to germinate. It's a semi-carnivorous plant. The part of all that is the discovery is based on the name. Learning the name for that is the first part, getting the password to the information about that organism. A pretty neat one. Going back to quotes of what a naturalist is, a naturalist studies the natural environment, generally with a broad range of interest, rather than with a particular speciality. Here is my challenge for you as master naturalist. Maybe you're really into birds or dragonflies. Maybe you're super into plants. Maybe you're really interested in dragonflies or animals. Maybe that's your thing. That's just like, whoa, I love this thing. My challenge to you as naturalists is to take those blinders and expand them a little bit. Expand them out to look at the entire ecosystem. I guarantee there's a lot of enjoyment on the things that you don't know yet. On all of those things, Michael Smith, excellent herpetologist, but also a great naturalist. Your eyes are open to the entire ecosystem. You may love to see a snake, and that's a highlight of the day when you see a snake. Absolutely. But you're also aware of the birds singing, of the ants over here, of the little flowers and the different plants. So this is the point of also being a master naturalist, is taking maybe that thing that you really love and then also expanding out your knowledge, your interest, your passion into the entire ecosystem. You may say to me, well, yeah, Sam, Julian Rivershaw, Ferdinand Lindheimer, they walked out the front door and they're in the wilderness. I don't know exactly where you live, but I bet when you walk out the front door, you're hearing the sounds of the urban ecosystem, the horn honks. You are smelling the exhaust fumes in the air, perhaps. Is there nature that's still present in the urban ecosystem? What do you think? Yay, nay, yay? Abso-freaking-lutely. There is a lot of biodiversity that still exists with us here in Dallas-Fort Worth. Looking at numbers, if you like numbers, the tool that I'll talk about in just a little bit, iNaturalist. So far within Dallas-Fort Worth, the 10 counties that make up Dallas-Fort Worth, we have documented 10,722 unique taxon. How many can you name? Okay, I saw a rat snake once. What'd you say? Capsella bursipastoris. Oh, good. Yes, the shepherd's purse. Okay, I saw a cardinal once, a blue bonnet, fox squirrel. We still have about 10,718 to go. The point is this: there is a lot of diversity that exists with us and amongst us here in Dallas-Fort Worth. And our personal discoveries are valid. They are valid. Bob was just talking about that dragonfly flinging its eggs. That's a cool discovery. That's an awesome discovery. And Bob, I don't want to take you down from that high, but people have already seen that. People have documented that before. I don't want to be that guy, but people have written about that, have written, how that works. But our personal discoveries are valid. My wife and I have a healthy relationship. I keep reminding my therapist of that. We have a healthy relationship. One of the things that we do, she is a quilter. She does a lot of fabrics and stuff. And part of my job is to drive her to the fabric store, and I drop her off, and then I go to the ditch. I go to the ditch outside of the fabric store, and I flip over logs. I look at bugs, and that's sort of my role. It's not that far from the truth. So I was in Dalworthington Gardens. You may have heard of Dalworthington Gardens, in between Arlington. Well, it's over there by Arlington. We were at a fabric store outside of Arlington. I was flipping some logs, flipping some rocks over, and I found this little guy. This is a weird critter. It's called Myrmecophilus. Myrmecophilus nebraskensis. Myrmeco means ant. Phyllis means loving. This is not a picture. This is my crappy picture of it. Do you see it? Can you see it? Yeah. A little tiny cricket. This is a little tiny blind cricket. What it does is it goes to an ant bed. It rolls around in the pheromones, in the stink of these ants. It goes into the ant's nest and eats their feces. This is how this ant-loving cricket lives. It was found in the ditch outside of a fabric store in Dalworthington Gardens. A cricket that eats ant turds. Pretty interesting. It's an interesting critter that we share the urban ecosystem with. These personal discoveries, and I got to tell you, I couldn't sleep like that night when I was in the rabbit hole of the information about these things. So crazy cool. A show of hands, how many of you have heard of this guy before? Okay, we'll come back to that in a second. So let's do a little experiment together. Brentano, would you help me out with something, buddy? So let's do a little experiment together. And Michael, would you also help me out? Or someone? Yeah, actually, Zane, help me out, buddy. Good, all right, always. So Zane, make sure that everybody has a pen or pencil. Okay, so as Brentano is passing out a blank sheet of paper, Zane is going to give you a pen or pencil. They may not all work, so be sure to test it if yours is working or not. So as you get your sheet of paper, we're not going to make notes on it yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show a few of the critters, and thank you, Michael, for being willing to help there. Zane's good on that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a few urban critters. Don't need to take any notes or anything like that yet, but let's talk about a couple of these urban critters, but kind of pay attention to these few suckers. We'll start out with the bluebonnet. Texas bluebonnet, the Texas state flower. Yeah, we know this guy, lovely guy, beautiful little plant. When you have the botany section, you'll probably learn some more about our bluebonnets. These guys are found in our urban ecosystem too. We have our pecan tree, the state tree of Texas. Caria illinoisensis is the name of this one. A lovely, lovely plant, has a great relationship with squirrels. It produces tons and tons and tons of fruit. A lot of those fruit are eaten by squirrels. Some squirrels will take some, they'll dig it in the ground. Something happens to that squirrel, or they don't remember, and that pecan tree just used that furry critter to move around. The blue dasher dragonfly. We're talking about dragonflies earlier. Lovely, lovely thing. It's doing this pose called obelisking, where it's reducing the surface area of it. Does this when it's really, really hot outside, so it sticks its abdomen straight up in the air. A beautiful thing, the monarch butterfly, just recently documented or classified, I guess, as an endangered, maybe not species, but at least the pattern of migration that is a threatened behavior for these. Thank you, buddy. All right, so we have our monarch, bluegill. Any of these sunfish? Sam, when was the last time you caught a bluegill? A couple weeks ago with his bare hands, just grabbed in there. Good. Our sunfish, beautiful little things. Would play with these guys as a little kid. I'd take little grasshoppers and sacrifice them to the sunfish out there. They're waiting for me in the afterlife, I know. Northern cardinal, beautiful, beautiful bird. A common thing when I was down in the valley for a birding festival, there was a group from England that came. They said, we saw the most extravagant bird today. We saw a cardinal. And yeah, I go, okay, yeah, yeah. If you're not from here, the cardinal is an incredible bird. Thank you, Zane. Thank you, buddy. Okay, buddy. So the cardinal, beautiful bird. Let's not forget some of the common things here. Gulf Coast toad, show of hands. Anybody ever seen a Gulf Coast toad before? Beautiful. Love these guys. Really, really incredible critters. Fox squirrels. I just talked about their relation. Good. Very good. Bob was ready with that hand up. Seen one? Yes, they are found here. Bobcats. Anybody seen one in real life before? Oh, they are here. They are present. They are present in the urban ecosystem. So we have our 9 critters here, our 9 organisms. What I want you to do is select one, okay? Select one, and from your memory, no looking at any pictures, from your memory, draw it. Ready, go. Draw that critter. One of 9 that we selected. What does it look like? And some lovely pictures of what might be used. Could be ears. Let's see. What does that thing look like? And keep drawing. I want you to keep on drawing. I'll tell you when you can take your pencil down. So if you finish your critter, put some shadows in there. Okay. What does that look like? Okay. So what does that thing look like? Go ahead and draw that out. Good. All right, maybe another minute or so to draw. So put in some. Keep drawing. No pencils down. No pencils down. Keep drawing. Good. Very, very good. Draw it from your memory. Okay, another 30 seconds or so. Good. All right. Good. Keep drawing, keep drawing, keep drawing. Okay. All right. Ready? 5 more seconds. Get ready to put down your pens to stop drawing. 5, 4, 3, 3.5, 2, 1. Good. Now, let's address some of these questions. Okay, the first question is, what does it consume? And if you want to, you can write this out, or you can just think about it. You can think about it too. What does it consume, or what consumes it? Okay, the first question, what does it consume? What consumes it? Second question, what are the resources involved for its survival? Okay. What are the resources involved for its survival? The third part, what other organisms does it interact with regularly? What comes and visits that bluebonnet or that fish or that toad? Where does it live? You can be as specific or broad as you want. If you want to go earth with that, cool. If you want to go my backyard underneath that one brick that's second to the left, cool. If you want to go the ponds or the lakes or the rivers, okay. What threatens its, either that individual or the entire population / species, what threatens its existence? Okay, so we have our few questions. These are ecological questions. Okay, show your neighbor. All right, I want you to talk to your neighbor about the different things. Show off your picture. Talk to your neighbors. So you can go groups of 3. You can go groups of 3. And if you want to scoot over, show your neighbors. Show your friends. What are the ecological questions? Show off your picture. Okay, keep addressing those questions. Make sure that you've addressed all of these questions. Okay, about 30 more seconds. 30 more seconds. Wrap it up. Okay. All right, let's talk about this together as a group. Anyone brave enough? Anyone brave enough to show off your drawing? Go for it, Jose. Stand. Come on up here. Come on up. Come on down. Good. Very good with the run. Okay. Say what? Okay, so you did right. That's so much. Trust me. Okay, go ahead. What was your critter?
My critter was the bluebonnet. You can't see it because I draw very, very softly. But I tried to be as accurate as possible, put the little pods that it has.
Beautiful. All
And
right.
So for the first question, what does it consume? Well, it consumes sunlight. What consumes it? I wrote down just kind of like the primary consumers, the smaller insects or anything that just kind of is there. What are the organisms does it interact with regularly? Pollinators. Yeah. And where does it live? Texas. And what threatens it? I put down urbanization. Let's say.
And what are the resources involved?
Oh, yes, sorry, I missed that one. I would put just the earth, soil, water, and access to light, those kinds of resources, I imagine. Thank you.
The resources are the earth.
Yeah, you can put that right there.
It's the earth. Anybody else brave enough? Madison, come on down, Madison. Let's give it up for Madison. Okay, good. All right, Madison, come on. What was your critter? A squirrel. Very good. Can I show it off to folks? Holy moly, look at that. That's beautiful. Oh, it has personality right there. It is getting ready to eat all of my birdseed. I know it. Okay, what does it consume? What consumes it?
I put acorns for what it consumes and bobcats and hawks for what consumes it.
Perfect.
Um,
Resources involved.
Shade, trees, snags, and water.
Other organisms that it interacts with regularly.
Birds, insects like ticks and fleas it might have on it, and then predators
Where does it live?
in or on trees like oak trees and pecan trees.
Perfect. And then finally, what threatens its existence?
I could have put like cars, but I put habitat loss in oak wilt because they live in oak trees, so and they eat acorns. So.
Good answer. Awesome, Madison. Way to go. Can you do a confession time?
You don't have to raise your hand. So I read a little bit about their adaptations, and I don't want to step on, I guess it's Rachel that's doing mammalogy, but I've read something that squirrels are erratic for a reason. If a squirrel is going straight like this, a bird of prey can time out that strike perfectly. If a squirrel is erratic in its movements, perhaps that helps keep it safe from that. Unfortunately, it stops right in front of your car. So very interesting. The experiment that we just did, this is what naturalists do. This is exactly what naturalists do. And our activity comes with a promise. Would you stick up your pinky for me real quick? And now curve it a little bit like this. We are pinky promising something right now. Our pinky promise is that sometime this weekend, what we're going to do is this. We're going to take a critter, and you can put down your pinkies now. They get sore after a while. I want you to find a critter, find a plant, find an organism, find something. I want you to address these questions. This is what a naturalist does. And this may require you to sit down for a second. It may require that you chill out. If just for a moment, Michael talked about oneness with nature, with, experiencing nature last night. The same sort of thing take a little bit of time with that organism. And I'll leave this up here if you do need to write down these questions. This is what a naturalist does. A naturalist engages, but also is inquisitive on what, how it lives, where it lives, what threatens its existence. Can we do anything about that last question? That's a hard one. That's a real hard one. That comes into action on our part. But finding out these sort of questions, a naturalist does this. This is what naturalists do. And I don't know if you realized it, but we pinky promised on this. I don't know if you're a student of history, but there have been wars waged on broken pinky promises. So sometime this weekend, you have promised me, I remember that feel. I remember the feel of all of your pinkies that you are going to be going out and making these sort of observations sometime this weekend. This is what a naturalist does. Now, the naturalists of old, the folks like Lincecum, like Lindheimer, like Rivershaw, you know, they didn't really have the best cell reception. So instead, what they would do is take their journals. They'd take their journals, make the drawings, just as you did. They would draw the characteristics up close. You don't have to do that with that critter that you decide to dedicate a little bit of time to this weekend. You don't have to, but I get a lot when I do, when I draw out some of these structures of it. It makes me spend a little extra time with it too. So the naturalist of the past did this sort of stuff. Well, these days we have different tools. We have these different tools. Yes, we can use these different tools to help us engage with nature these days. Okay, so let's take a little bit of a break. We're going to take a little bit of break. For those of you that need to still write these down, totally cool. Let's take a break. It is 7:15 right now. Let's take a 10-minute break. So 7:25, come on back here. There are restrooms out there. There's water fountains. If you want to go outside, get some fresh air too, totally cool. All right. Marcy, did you have a question? Oh yeah, your pens and pencils, if you borrowed one, if you wouldn't mind bringing that back up here, that would be awesome. Okay, so back in here, 7:25, 10-minute break. Cool. Awesome. Oh, Brent, thank you. You're my middleman. I like it. I like it.
Are you still? Maybe it was possible for well, so yeah, you study them and vision plan some of the and that they all and that was still we saw one of the two we saw the other two and I don't regret thinking with something and like we were thinking right, and so I'm saying it's good. I'm saying it's very, very easy. I told you 2 weeks ago,
No, you won. You won. You won. I accept defeat. Don't shout.
Okay, I'm gonna use this thing like an ice.
Okay.
Oh, shoot, recently? Maybe, I don't know. About the Morris, about that folder. Hold on, hold on. I saw you typing up something and you was making. I said, no worries. I said, by the way, I'm gonna take some of your last. I said, you said, oh, I see you around. Yeah. I became an analyst. So I work as an offense and health. Tests, patients, and diagnose and figure out. So are you doing the skin here? You know, it's pollinating right now, you know, it's in season. The dragon, chin pods. Part of the chin pod ACA family. Immigrants in the ACA family. There's two probably. The pollen is so indistinguishable that even transit conditions can't differentiate them between each other. So we just prove them again, calling them. Or, oh yeah, it's a severe No. Environmental. You can keep coming by. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah. That's just what happens when you work in two bodies. I mean, I work in doctor. When you fall out of time, the boss is a body. That's me. This. Yeah. And the field trip you're gonna find somebody else. Yeah, it's volunteer. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You saw it. Well, yes. 40 neighbors. 7 people on. Yeah, exactly.
All right, Zane. You're doing good, buddy. I'm just about to start back up. All right. So let's come on and gather back up. We're going to gather back up. Good deal. Okay, so again, as we're kind of gathering back up, sitting down. So we had that pinky promise. So I remember it. You remember it. I remember this. Yes, yes, I still feel it. So we have that pinky promise on what we're going to try to do sometime this weekend. I'll give you all weekend to do it. Was just talking to Michael Smith, and he said that he'll give you extra points of respect if you can find and do those experiments with a herp. So if you can find a reptile or an amphibian and do some of these, bonus points. Okay, so Michael Smith, who's going to be doing the herpetology section, is going to maybe bring this back up. So major kudos if you can find a critter, a reptile or amphibian. So we have those questions, and Lincecum and Revershawn and all of those early naturalists, they didn't have the same sort of tools that we had. And as I mentioned these tools, let me also ask you something personally. How many times have you gone outside and you have seen other folks, maybe kids, maybe adults, and the birds are singing, everything, everything, nature is magnificent, it's all around there, and they're glued to their devices. Have you seen that before? Yeah, and I even see some hand raises. Yes, yes, and you go, oh, you're missing out. You're missing out on all this. These tools, the tools of today, sure, they can be distractions. They can definitely be distractions that folks have, but they can also be a naturalist tool. These can be a hook to get us engaged with nature, so we can engage some more with the tools of today. So let's talk about how we can use some of these tools and contribute. We're going to talk about citizen or community science. It's got a lot of different names. Some people say citizen science, some people say community science, some people say collaborative science. Whatever you want to call it, it doesn't care. It is basically the involvement of the public in addressing questions. Very, very broad here. You got a question? Well, groups of people can help us address this. All different kinds of community science. If you're into stars, if you're into light pollution, if you're into noise pollution or air pollution, there are citizen or community science approaches to that. If you're into nature, there are some pretty cool citizen science initiatives, programs, tools, communities involved with that. The prerequisites to being a citizen science: interest. There it is. That is the prerequisite. If you have interest, if but for a moment, you have all that is required to become a citizen or a community scientist. That's all you need. But there are some actions that we need to do. So we already pinky sweared on this. The first thing is exploring. We need to explore. Step number one, explore. I always loved working with kids. Brent and I worked a lot with kids at Oliver Nature Park. And something happens when we grow up, when we put on our adult clothes, we sometimes get scared to go, whoa, wow, neat. Kids aren't scared. They're not scared to do that. If you get a chance to ever work with kids, if you get to work with kids, especially outside, you can see and hear some of this jubilation, this excitement. I give you full permission. On behalf of the state of Texas, I give you full permission. When you're outside, you can go yippee. You can go woohoo if you see something interesting. I give you full permission. And if you get anybody giving you slack for it, you can say, I have a permit to be excited about these given by the state of Texas. That is step number one, is exploring. So we have to go outside, explore, use your senses. Using your senses could be smell, could be hearing, could be sight, even taste. One of my botany professors said you can eat anything once. So it could be taste, feel. Talking again about Oliver Nature Park, and I don't know, Brent, if I ever told you this story. There was a group of blind kiddos that came out to Oliver Nature Park, and I got to lead that group of blind kiddos. I had a handler with me, but the whole nature walk, I closed my eyes. First of all, we didn't go very far. We did not go very far, but it was such an interesting experience for me to close my eyes and use some of these other senses that my eyes maybe overlapped of them. Maybe do this, try this. When you're outside exploring, close your eyes if just for a moment, listen to some of the different things, feel the different stuff. Step number one, explore. Step number two, if you want to become a citizen or community scientist, record. So exploring in itself, beautiful. I want you to do that daily. That is good for our health, for our well-being. Go and explore. But a citizen or community scientist also records what he or she or they find. You can do this on a sheet of paper. You can do this through your device, through a camera. Oh, anybody own a camera? Does anybody have a camera? Yes, I encourage you. Yes, these things have cameras. They do have cameras, and they're pretty good cameras, no doubt. But when you get a camera, and Sam, Sam and Sydney, you guys know this. When you're playing with that camera, you see things that are different. and you spend a little bit more time with the organism that you're trying to hunt with your camera. If you get a chance to play with the camera, it's a great way to record things. Perhaps just for your own intellectual enjoyment, very, very cool, but that's the second step. So explore, record. If you stop doing this, check your pulse. Just check your pulse. You might be gone. You might be gone if you stop learning. And I said it earlier, the master of master naturalist does not mean expert. It does not mean expert. And when we say things with confidence, boy, there's so many times that I will say things with such confidence. And then someone will bring something up, or I'll learn something. I'll go, oh my gosh, what I thought I knew, I don't really know. So the master of master naturalist does not mean expert. It means dedicated, and dedicated to learning too. Continue to learn. You can use the old school approach of getting a book, getting a field guide. Who here has the most field guides? How many of you own more than 10 field guides? Okay, a few people more than 10, more than 20. Let me tell you, not enough. Not enough. Go to Half Price Books. You can load up on those field guides. It is so much fun. A field guide is not necessarily what I use to learn the names. Sometimes I do, but with the field guide, I'll flip through a field guide. It trains my eyes. It trains your eyes on what to look for. So many times when I'm using a bug guide, I won't be necessarily looking something up. I'll just be flipping through the pages, looking at the pictures. It's training my eyes to potentially see some of those things. If you have 10 field guides, if you have 20 field guides, if you have one field guide, that's not enough. Go get some more field guides. Learn, discover what, why, when, where, how. All of these questions, the same sort of questions that we addressed with our ecology questions. Here is the power of citizen or community or collaborative science. Contribution. So all of that stuff that we've done, exploring, recording, learning, beautiful things. In by themselves, they're magnificent. I want you to do those. If you want to be part of something bigger than ourselves, is this, the contribution. Name it if you know it. Anybody know that bird? Go for it, Madison. That's okay. Let me do the sound for you. It goes, not a warbler. That's a good guess. There are a lot of warblers that are bright pink, yellow like that. What do you think? Go for it, Sam. Gig thistle, one of the most annoying birds on the tall grass prairie. From dawn to dusk, they do not stop. It is all day long. They go all day long. And I love them. I love them. They're fantastic. I'm kind of annoying, so I guess maybe that's where we relate. So what we're doing with this map, and if you're not aware, that's the United States. And then down there on the bottom is a year. So we start with January, we have April, we've got June there, we've got September, and we have December there. So we're looking at a year and a year of differences. Right at around April or so, someone in Tarrant County or in Dallas County sees this bird. He, she, or they see this bird and make an observation of it, in this case on eBird. They're making an observation, I saw this bird. By itself, it may not be too relevant. It may not be that interesting, maybe very interesting for the naturalist. But when he, she, or they contribute, when they share that with observations of people in Kansas, in Oklahoma, probably in Mexico, even further south than the United States, that's where we start to see patterns. That single observation, when added with thousands and millions in some cases of other observations, then we start to see patterns. What does this show us? Anybody know? Migration. Very good. We're looking at migration of this bird. So the power of citizen or community science comes with the contributions of all of these individuals that are interested in whatever it might be, sharing their knowledge together to address big questions. This is what community science is in a nutshell. Let's start with the naturalist. Okay, yes, it's a circle. So where do you start on a circle? We'll start with the naturalist. Read that as master naturalist. Read that as person that has a fleeting interest in some bug or in some little lizard. Name it if you know it. Anybody know the name of that little lizard? Bob, were we talking about this one earlier? Maybe not. Anybody know? You know, Ryan. Texas spiny lizard, exactly right. Our spiny lizards, lovely little lizards. Every once in a while, I'll get a call into the office that said, hey, we have horned lizards here in my backyard. It was crawling up a tree. Well, probably not a horned lizard, but still a really cool lizard. This is a Texas spiny lizard, one of the Scoloporus there. So that naturalist, that person is interested in that little lizard. He, she, or they makes an observation. Hey, I saw a lizard crawling up a tree. Or, hey, I saw a lizard eat a cockroach in my backyard. Whoa. He, she, or they share that observation with the community. That community could be mom or dad. That community could be son or daughter. That community could be your neighbors. That group starts to grow. They start to go, hey, whoa, that's neat that you saw a spiny lizard. I saw a spiny lizard the other day. Oh, spiny lizards eat cockroaches? I saw one eating a cricket the other day. That community starts to grow. That community then starts to say, whoa, this is kind of cool that we have spiny lizards. This is kind of cool that we have bluebonnets, or that we have wildflowers, or that we have a bobcat in our backyard. They start to vocalize that interest. We can call it advocacy. They start to advocate for, that's pretty neat that we have nature here. Land managers read that as HOA, read that as the person that mows my lawn, read that as city council, as park board, whatever it might be. The land managers recognize a constituency. They recognize a group of people. They start to manage the habitat for the community, creating new naturalists, and the cycle continues. It may sound a little pie in the sky kind of stuff, that a little lizard, like a spiny lizard, could protect a piece of land. Let me be honest with you, this stuff happens. This stuff happens, and it is beautiful, it is magnificent, it is powerful. So it comes from a naturalist making an observation and sharing that with the community. So let's talk about some of our citizen or community science programs, initiatives, communities. Anybody like water in here? Show of hands. Has anybody had water lately? Are you drinking enough water these days? Make sure that you drink water. How many of you know what's in that water that we are drinking? Well, sometimes we don't know what's in the water that either we're drinking or that is flowing by our creek or by the house. If you're really into water, there's a really cool initiative called Texas Stream Team, where you can do little analyses of the water in creeks or in ponds or in lakes. If you're really interested, and I'm just giving you some examples of this, I challenge you, I encourage you, I double dare you to look up more about it. So if water is a big interest for you, this is a cool thing to be a part of. The Nature Center has a spot where they do the stream team testing. So if you want to do some stuff, I was just talking to Keith earlier about volunteer opportunities at the Nature Center. This is one of them if you want to study the water out there. It's been a while since we've had rain. Yeah, anybody remember the last time we saw rain? It's been a while. You remember? Okay, I saw a drop. I saw a drop. Some people are really interested in the weather patterns. And your backyard, the weather in your backyard may be really relevant to you, but it doesn't really address any big questions. But if you take your backyard weather and another person's backyard weather and another person's backyard weather and a lot of people's backyard weather together, then we start to see patterns. Then we start to see changes over time. This initiative is called CocoRoss, the Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network. How many of you remember February of last year? Remember? Yeah. How many of you remember our current summer that we're dealing with? Yeah. They're different. They're very, very different. This is a way that you can collaborate, where you can add some of these observations with this growing body of what is the weather or the climate doing over time? Brit Herbarium right next door. So I worked in the Brit Herbarium, one of my favorite jobs. God, I love that job. My buddies would bust my chops when I was working there. They'd say, Sam, what did you do today? And I said, well, I filed for 8 hours. And they'd be like, what a lame job. But when you're filing a plant specimen collected on the east side of Mount Kilimanjaro, when you're filing a plant specimen collected in Indian territory in 1830, when you're holding a plant specimen that was grabbed by the hands of Ferdinand Lindheimer or Julian Reverchon, when you start to do this, it's a pretty cool experience. And I would go out and collect myself, and my specimens sit right next to Ferdinand Lindheimer, right next to George Engelmann, right next to these legendary botanists. My specimens sit. This is also where I fell in love with the names of plants. You know, I mentioned earlier about repetition. What does repetition do? Works. It works. That's maybe not. A few more times, 3 more times. When I'm out pressing specimens, when I'm filing specimens, if I file sorghum halepensi, sorghum halepensi, sorghum halepensi, sorghum halepensi, sorghum halepensi, pretty soon I know what sorghum halepensi looks like. So all of that repetition, or Johnson grass, I know what it looks like with the herbarium. So if you're really into plants, if you really want to learn the names of plants, right next door, they've got some cool volunteer opportunities. This is part of citizen science too, where we go out and collect specimens, where we go out and file things like this, digitize, taking these specimens, transcribing the labels. These are volunteer opportunities, but this is also community science. Show of hands, anybody like birds? Have you ever seen a bird before? Anybody? Okay, a few people. Birds aren't real. Oh, have you seen that birds aren't real? Oh man, very funny. Very, very funny. It's all a joke. Everything is a joke. If you're into birds, and I think birds are real, if you are into birds, this is a great way to document the birds that you see. You go outside, you see some birds, maybe you don't have your camera with you, but you saw what you saw. You can document the species that you see over time in that location. By itself, that bird list that you create might not be too important, but when you compare that with bird lists collected for the past several decades, then we start to see some pretty cool patterns. So Michael didn't mention this. I too am a master naturalist. So I am part of the class of 2013. Almost 10 years ago, I took this same class. It is challenging for me to get my 40 hours a year. I got to be honest. I don't always get my 40 hours a year. And that's okay. First of all, it's okay. The Master Naturalist program is very like mafiosa. Once you're in, you're in. Like you will be in. You don't have to get your 40 hours. You are part of the family, like it or not. You cannot leave. And that's a good thing. So you don't have to get your 40 hours. We really want you to. We really, really want you to try your best to get your 40 hours of volunteer time. This is one of the ways that I get half of my hours. I get at least half of my hours doing the Christmas bird count. So much fun. What you do, you wake up early, you go out and you document birds all day long. It is so much fun. It is so much fun documenting the different birds. I do a couple, I don't lead the circles. I'm just a part of a couple of the circles in Dallas. So I go and help out with this. Great fun. Mark your calendars, December 14th through January 5th. There's one in the Fort Worth Nature Center does. Do you remember the date of that? December? It's sometime in December. Okay, it's early in December. I think it is. Yeah, I think it is earlier in December. The ones that I do in Dallas are pretty late. They're January, way late in January, or I should say early January, but late on to when this window is. The 123rd bird count is going to be going on this upcoming year, this year. So this is being part of something way bigger than ourselves. Yeah.
And just pointing out, you don't have to know birds. You have to want to occur the birds.
So yes, so my wife, and I love my wife dearly, she's also a master naturalist. I don't want this to sound bad, but she's not a great birder. She's not a great birder. But let me tell you, People love when my wife comes to these things. What she does is she takes notes. So she hears somebody say 2 chickadees, she writes it down. So she's the note taker. She's probably the most valuable person on the team, is the one writing it down. So if you don't know anything about birds, but you want to get some volunteer hours, if you want to be part of something big, this is a great way to do it. You don't have to know anything. Again, the master does not mean expert, it means dedicated. There's also Project Feeder Watch too. Certain days of the year, people set out their bird feeders in their backyard or at a public park, document the species that are found in their backyard. We are constantly being invaded by various species. Lots of new species for our areas, not necessarily novel species to science, not necessarily new species to science, but things are showing up. Things are showing up. Whenever I work with land managers or private land managers, they're saying, oh yeah, I'm dedicating that area to my land as wild, just letting it go wild. Say, well, if you want to manage the land, you still got to address the invasive species. That land that looks wild is being constantly invaded by lots of plants, lots of bugs, lots of critters. One that we're keeping an eye on right now just showed up down in Galveston, the cactus moth. This guy decimates Opuntia. It destroys our prickly pear cactus. Really bad news. So a lot of different approaches to this, or a lot of different initiatives when it comes to invasive species. This is one we're keeping an eye out for. A native species that we're looking at here. Talked earlier about Jim Barnum. His wife, Stephanie Barnum, is really involved in this. Did you know that these are in Dallas County? These are in Dallas-Fort Worth. This orchid lives here with us. And I say here, it lives actually in Dallas County at Cedar Ridge Preserve. It's abundant. And I like that response. Somebody just said, huh, that's a good response. You are fully permitted to go, full permission to be excited about it. This is an amazing orchid. It's an orchid that does not produce any of its own chlorophyll. It doesn't have chloroplast. There's no green to this. So it uses this mycorrhizal fungus to get all of its nutrients. It is found at the hottest time of year, mid to late June and July. That's when you find this guy at Cedar Ridge Preserve. Stephanie Varnum leads the surveys of this. Brent, you've gone to several of these. Great fun. You sweat like crazy, but you get to be, you get to engage with these really cool plants. One of my first dates that I took my now current wife on, we went out frog watching. We went out to White Rock Lake and listened to frog. I know it's romantic, isn't it? Isn't what I keep reminding my therapist. There is romance. It's still alive. Remember the frog calls? So what we did is we went out to a spot and we listened for frogs, and we documented the different species of frogs that we heard in that area. A great way to assess the populations of frogs. Michael knows this. Frogs and toads, these guys act as the canary in the coal mine. They are sensitive to some of our current issues. Air pollution, water pollution, all that sort of stuff. Our amphibians are pretty good bioindicators of these things. So there is the Amphibian Watch, a Texas Nature Tracker project too. Going back to invasives, if you are really into invaders, there's a website. I think they actually have an app now too, Texas Invasives, texasinvasives.org. One that I'll talk about in just a little bit is that little green beetle. This one right here. That little green beetle, beautiful beetle. Oh my gosh, they're so pretty. I'll talk about it in a second. It is one that gets a lot of people freaked out. We have created management plans now throughout the Metroplex because of the discovery of that little beetle by a 10-year-old kid just north of the nature center. So if you want to document invasive species, this is a great website, texasinvasives.org. My favorite thing. Monarch tagging. I don't know if there's anybody that does it specifically here for the Cross Timbers Master Naturalist, but over next door at the North Texas Master Naturalist, we have a person that does this, that hands out a lot of these stickers. We go out and we capture monarchs. We toss a little tag on them. We tell if it's a boy or a girl monarch. This one, oh, So there's a little black dot normally that's right there. This one may be a female. But if it has the black dot, that's the male. If it lacks the thicker black vein, that's a female. This one might be a female. So you have to document what sex it is. You put a little tag on it, you record all that. And I know it's silly, but I also fantasize when I do this. I fantasize, I put that little sticker on there, and I imagine a little kid up in Canada or down in Mexico that catches that exact same monarch and documents it right after I have tagged it. I know the vast majority are probably hit by cars, but still, it's a great way that we can document, and I don't mean this as a downer. This is the way that we document the populations of monarchs. This is a mark recapture study. So they have actually algorithms for this on which ones they recapture, that they can assess the entire population and also their migrational patterns. My favorite things. I know that I say my favorite thing for a lot of stuff, but my favorite thing is gathering with fellow naturalists and documenting everything. Going out and observing everything. It is so much fun. It gives me so much pleasure, but it's also super informative, crazy informative, that you can find out what species are there at that date, at that time, based on what type of management, if it's a public park or a private area or whatever. You can get a lot of information by doing these BioBlitz events. So that's a fun thing. And the tool that we use for this, or one of the tools that we use for this, is something I am bonkers about. I am so crazy about this tool. It's called iNaturalist. I have a lower back tattoo of this. Actually, I haven't showed this off. It's a lower back tattoo. And what's nice is I'll wear like a t-shirt and I'll be bending over to take a picture of something. And it just deserves that as a little marketing. So crazy about this tool. It has revolutionized the way that I go outside. So for my master's degree, for my thesis, I studied population genetics of gophers, little rodents. So I used a DNA sequencer, a multi-million-dollar tool that would tell me the nucleotides, the DNA nucleotides, A, T, G, or C, the building blocks of life. This multi-million-dollar tool I got to play with my master's degree. I say with a lot of bias, this is a more important tool. This is a more revolutionary tool, even over a DNA sequencer. So informative, so powerful. What is it? Well, it's really a community. It's a social network, basically. It is not just that, though. It's a database. It is a message board. It is a show and tell. It's Facebook for nature nerds. It's Facebook for nature nerds. So it's a great way to share your or contribute to share what you see with others. Part of one of the mission statements, not really a mission statement, the main mission statement is iNaturalist is an online social network of people sharing biodiversity information to help each other learn about nature. It's an engagement tool. It's a tool that helps you engage with nature. Documenting biodiversity and distribution of species through time and space with evidence. It started actually in 2008. An individual named Kenichi Ueda and 3 other graduate students at UC Berkeley recognized that there was a growing, what's the right word, virality of social media posts. And I don't know, this may date me, but does anybody remember a picture of a dress? And this dress was either blue with gold or black with yellow. Anybody remember that? This made national news of this stupid dress and what people saw. Imagine, if you need to close your eyes, it's cool. Imagine that I share a picture of a cricket that eats ant turds, and the same people that were talking about that dress is weird, they're talking about a little cricket that lives in the smell of ants. I know it may be a pie in the sky dream, but that's part of what this is. It's sharing those observations with everyone. Started in 2008. Now 2.3 million users. It is international. About 111 million observations. So that's a lot. I don't know if you're good with numbers. That's a lot. That's a whole lot. It is international. Just the other day, I was looking at observations made in Ukraine. There are naturalists in Ukraine right now using iNaturalist, making observations. There are naturalists in Russia right now making observations. And you know what's beautiful? That those naturalist observations are in the same community. They're being uploaded to the same community. I'm interacting with both the Ukrainians and the Russians from my little desk in Fort Worth, Texas. I am communicating with these fellow naturalists that are in the same community that I'm in. So dang cool. Beautiful thing. I don't want to get too much into the weeds of it, honestly. When I try to give a presentation on what is iNaturalist, it's kind of like giving a presentation on baseball. I can show you what a bat looks like. I can show you what a glove, what a ball. I can write out all the rules of baseball. But how do you learn baseball? Anybody know? You play. Exactly right. You got to throw that ball around. You got to, throw and catch. You got to hit at the ball. It's the same sort of thing with iNaturalist. Is I'll show you kind of how to play with it, but the best way to learn is simply going outside and using it. So we start out with, and there is an app for it. I'll go into that in a little bit. But we start out with who you are. And this is actually where I lose some people too. When you sign up for iNaturalist, you need a username and password. I know. It's another username and password. How many do you have? 50 that need to be changed every 6 hours? Yeah, for your security. Don't you feel safer? Don't you feel safer when you change your password? So yes, you have to create a username and a password to be part of it. It's to make sure that you're a person, that you're an individual. There are a lot of bots out there and all that sort of stuff that try to infiltrate our community. So we need to find out that you're a person. And then we get to data. What is the data here? We start out with where you saw it. And I work for the government, so I can say this. If you have one of these devices, we know where you are. We know where you are. And it sounds creepy, but for data, it's perfect. It's perfect. So, based on your internet reception or your Wi-Fi or whatever, your cell reception, you take a picture of something, we have exactly where you saw it based on how good your reception is. So where you saw it, what you saw. And I would argue for the data approach, this is the least important information, what you saw. You don't necessarily have to know what you saw to observe it. And a lot of people don't know what they see. That's why they're using this thing, to try to learn what it is. But the what you saw is probably the least important part of data here. The where you saw it, when you saw it, something common today may not be common tomorrow. My dad tells me about playing with horned lizards here in Fort Worth. You know what? You're probably an honest person. Probably not. My dad is probably an honest person. I almost don't believe you because I've looked. I have looked. Michael, have you looked for horned lizards here? Yeah, we've looked. Yeah, we looked. I mean, even if not intentionally, but sort of, we're looking around. We don't see horned lizards here anymore. My dad tells me about playing with them as a little kid. So what's super common today may not be too common tomorrow or 10 years or whatever. So when you saw it, super important. And then finally, the difference between this and some other tools is evidence. Did you know in Dallas, around White Rock Lake, we have an overpopulation of mountain lions? Based on the phone calls I get, we have an overpopulation of mountain lions. There are so many mountain lions. Yes, they're black and they all have collars, but they are mountain lions. Okay, I know what I saw. I know what I saw. I know what I saw. When I get that question, my follow-up is, did you get a picture? Did you get a picture? No, I didn't get a picture, but I know what I saw. I know what I saw. My wife, again, I'll talk about my wife for a second. She is a crime scene investigator. She's a CSI. I know it sounds sexy. It sounds way cool. In reality, it's a lot of decomps, finding dead bodies and dead babies. So it's not like the sexy show sort of stuff. I know it's pretty rough. But she deals in evidence. She does not interview people that are around there. No. That's not involved. She has everybody else leave the scene. The people that are involved, they leave the scene. She goes in with her camera, with the swabs, all that sort of stuff, and she picks up the evidence. That's what she does. In the same sort, not really the same sort of manner, but similar. When we see stuff, we try to get evidence of it with this tool. So the evidence can be in the form of a picture, usually a picture, but also a sound. It's a really cool addition that they have on their app where you can automatically do sound recordings too. So evidence is super important. It's not just that picture, but it's data. So this lovely little butterfly, show of hands, anybody ever seen one of these before? Yeah, good. Beautiful, beautiful butterfly. The common buckeye is the name of this one. So I saw this little butterfly at Cleburne State Park on June 9th of 2016. I saw it. I remember this engagement. I said, oh, that's so pretty. Took a little picture of it. I engaged with that little creature for a second. Great experience for me. A wonderful experience. But that experience is not really telling the universe much. It's not really telling the community much. When I put it on iNaturalist, it takes that little dot and combines it with all of the other dots. And then I start to see a picture of what's there. When we look at raw data, and I know you can't read it out here, but we have Weatherford far over here. There's downtown Fort Worth. There's the Nature Center up there, that congregation of dots. When we look at raw data, it's messy. It's really, really messy. So let's narrow it down. I was working with a group of students, or as they're known in the university system, revenue units. I was working with a group of revenue units at TCU on what are the critters around campus. And a couple of the students saw this lovely thing. We were just talking about this one earlier, Bob. Anoles, green anoles, lovely, lovely little critters. A couple students documented a few at TCU. Congratulations. Yes, they are here. They are present in Fort Worth. Very good, very good. I like to actually put the analogy on the artist George Seurat. Do you know George Seurat? He's the guy that did, good, know that guy. He's the guy that did the pointillism, all those dots. There's the picture of the people hanging out on that beach. Beautiful. So we got some fans. Have you ever looked up close at his art? Real close at it? If you look at it up real close, it sucks. It's a dot. It's just a dot. So his masterpiece sucks up close. But when you take a step back and another step back and another step back, then you start to see the masterpiece that it is. Those single dots are added with multiple of other dots. In the same sort of manner, observations made at TCU, okay, I hope you engaged with those critters. They're here. Congratulations. Let's take a step back, another step back, and another step back, and aha, we start to see where this species is in space and in time. So it's looking at our green anole. Anybody notice anything weird about this? Anybody? Hawaii. Good job, Madison. That's a killer vacation. Killer vacation in Hawaii. What do you think? They're not native to Hawaii. Probably were brought over either with turf, with a plant. Maybe some kid had a pet and got bored with it. It's an invasive species in Hawaii. It's invasive in San Diego, in Los Angeles, in South California. It's native to these areas, but we see it popping up elsewhere. So again, that little dot is added with all of the other dots, and we start to see what's where it is. Michael, name it if you know it. You know this guy?
Yeah,
Brown anole. It's brown, and it's an anole. The brown anole. Yes. This one also called the Cuban anole, Cuban brown anole, Anolis sangrii. It's popping up. It's popping up in our areas. It is native to Cuba and to the islands there, popping up along the coast. The first observation outside of the coast was actually found at a Home Depot in Austin. So an anole, a brown anole found at Home Depot. These things can move around. I mentioned it earlier. A 10-year-old kid, Sam Hunt, documented a cool little gorgeous beetle in his backyard. He put it on iNaturalist. A German coleopterist, a German guy that studies beetles with the name Boris, perfect. Boris came on and said, I think it's the genus Agrilis. So he came up with the genus of Agrilis. That didn't pop up any red flags. I remember seeing it and going, oh, okay, it's a Agrilis. We have several of those. Another student from the University of Madison, Wisconsin, he came on and said, that's emerald ash borer. Those three words together sparked little red flags. And I said, oh my goodness, that's something. We started to have this conversation with people, and now we are creating management plans for this little beetle. It's why ash trees in the Northeast are now an endangered species. The green ash is an endangered species in Michigan, up in the Northeast. It's endangered. Stay tuned. We added another host for this beetle, the Texas ash. It wasn't occurring in natural populations. Now it attacks Texas ash too. Stay tuned on this one. It all was sparked by a person that made an observation of something that he didn't know what it was. In this case, a 10-year-old kid didn't know what this little beetle was, sparked that conversation from the community, and now it's something that we're addressing. So there are apps for that. Yes, there is an app for iNaturalist. And it kind of makes me cringe a little bit when people say, oh, I have iNaturalist as the app, or oh, I have that app. Ooh, it's more than just the app. It's a lot more than just the app. The app is kind of like a plant press. It's kind of like binoculars. Okay. Yes, you can go out and collect plants and put them in the plant press. You can go out and look at birds with those tools. Great tools. But it's just a data collecting tool. It's just for collecting data. You got to go to the website to get the full effect of iNaturalist and the full output of it too. So, gosh, I won't talk about this. Let's start. Let's just play with this. So we start out with downloading the app. It is a free app. Oh, I didn't mention that. So it's a nonprofit organization. It's funded by the National Science Foundation, by National Geographic, by California Academy of Science, and then also by the community too, the people that want to donate to it. So a nonprofit, there's no ads, totally free to download it. There are apps for iPhone and Android. Does anybody have Windows Phone? Okay, thank God, because there is one on Windows Phone. It's horrible. It's really busted. But you get this app. You put in a username, has to have an email address. You sign up through that. One little bit of thing. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Sure, that's okay. So a cool one, get a cool one. I'm Snake Lover 420 or whatever. Get a cool name or whatever it is. Not that one. I didn't have that one, and that one's probably taken by somebody, I bet. But yeah, put up if you want to. Some people just use their names. Totally cool. Whatever you want to do, people will call you that though once you get your username. Yours is Ryan 43472. Yeah. And you can change it. You can change it. So signing up with a username and then a password, you need that information. Just real quick, if you play with the settings of this is also something that I use a lot to help me out. So when I'm out in the field, I'll be using my camera and my app. I'll take little pictures of the bugs or plants or the slow stuff. With this, I'll use my camera for the faster stuff, the stuff that I can't get close to. I also change my settings. I turn off the automatic upload. So if you turn off the automatic upload, it won't automatically upload. It sort of waits. It waits for you to get into Wi-Fi, into McDonald's or a library or wherever, where you can steal their Wi-Fi and upload all your stuff. So that's just a little one helpful tool. So this is kind of what it looks like, at least the iPhone version. The Android's a little bit different, and don't get too comfortable with this. And talking to the folks at iNaturalist, they're going to update this in the next few months, so it's probably going to have a whole nother look. But I go outside, I see a lovely little plant. Don't call it a weed. It's a beautiful little critter right there. So I take a picture of that. In the case of plants, one of the reasons I love plants are so chill. They are so cool. You don't have to sneak up on a plant. You know, it's just there. It is just there. The same thing with roadkill. I make roadkill observations. Heck yeah. I pull over. If I see dead roadkill, I will make an iNaturalist observation. So easy to sneak up on, and then you can get lots of pictures of it too. So with plants, they're super chill. So you can go and take multiple pictures. That's the key word here. If you know stuff about plants, you know that to identify a plant, you need the hairs on the underside of the second level of leaves that's closest to the stem for some of their identifications. No joke. That's how some of the keys are. So with plants, I try to get multiple pictures of them. You can add multiple pictures on one observation. Some people want to use this in their backyards, and it's great. Use it in your backyard. That's wonderful. But other people say, I don't want everyone to know what is in my backyard. When I'm working with private landowners, this is one of their big concerns. I don't want everybody to know what's back here. So they change their geoprivacy. The geoprivacy, which you can see there right here, geoprivacy can be open, it can be obscured, or it can be private. If it's open, the point is going to be based on your cellular connection, right where you saw it, and everybody can see exactly where it was. Private randomizes the location within, I think it's like a square 10 kilometers or 100 kilometers, basically a county level observation. So still informative. Private doesn't reveal any information at all and doesn't really add anything. So if you are concerned about people finding out what's in your backyard or on your private land, obscured, change that to obscured. It still gives some information on there. Also, you know what, if this happens sometimes, people get the app and they say, I'm going to get a lot of species. I'm going to Fort Worth Zoo. I'm going to Dallas Zoo. And no joke, you can load up. You can load up on tigers, on lions, no joke. But those guys are behind bars. I mean, they're kind of behind bars. And we don't, Fort Worth has chimpanzees. Fort Worth has giraffes, but they're in the cage. They're in the zoo. So if we do observe these things, same thing with our botanic gardens. There's stuff from Madagascar here at the Botanic Gardens. So when you document those things, changing that to captive or cultivated. The default is no, that's wild. So if you do observe a tiger, a lion in Fort Worth, unless you see it out in the wild, you'll have some skepticism if you do that. But if you see a botanical plant that you've planted somewhere, change that to captive cultivated. If you know what it is, you can put it in there. In this case, I knew that was a little type of sunflower. That's in the family Asteraceae. So that's one of our sunflowers. I knew it was in that group. You can add that if you want to. Because I have waiting to upload, or I have automatic uploads turned off, it's now waiting to upload. When I get to Wi-Fi, I'll hit that upload sign and it puts all of them in there. This is the part that blows my mind. And I know it's part of like the singularity of like when, you know, the Terminator, where computers will take over the world. I know it's part of that. It's pretty cool. The process is pretty cool. It's pretty cool in the meantime. Our computer overlords. This is part of the stages there. So I will take a picture of something. I'll take a little picture of something outside of my office at Cedar Hill State Park. I saw this lovely plant. I took a picture of it. I clicked on the what did I see? View suggestions. It takes the pixels of that image. It takes the location. There's an algorithm for all of this, a visual algorithm, and it gives me the suggestions of what this might be. To me, mind-blowing. This is mind-blowing technology. The key word here is suggestions. So on this one, it gave me the #1 suggestion, trumpet vine. Nailed it. Got it. #1. But on the third one, it says poison oak. And so I go, computer, you're so stupid. You're so stupid, computer. Look at this. I see leaves of 3 right here. I see the leaflets of 3. I can see what the computer was thinking here. The point of this, these are just suggestions. It's just suggestions of what it might be. There's also another few words that says seen nearby. Those are good words. If it's been an observation that's been seen and reviewed, verified nearby, that weighs it a little bit higher up in the algorithm. Just suggestions. Name it if you know it. tree, right, right, tree, tree. That's about as good as we could get. Plant, I would accept plant. That's about as good as we can get on this. So that's not too informative. What we really want to do, and it's a good joke, you know, if you want to get to know a plant, grab the nuts. Grab the nuts of that plant, and you will get to know that plant. In this case, the nuts of this one are macrocarpa, big fruit, bur oak. This is a bur oak. I came up close to this to hold the reproductive structures of this plant, to hold a leaf, to get a close-up of the bark, a lot more informative than just that far-off picture of the tree. Yeah, go for it, Brent. Yeah, great point. So the visual algorithm, your default photo, your first photo is what it uses to weigh that algorithm. They are working on making the multiple photos weigh in with that algorithm. There's a lot more that goes over my head with that programming, but great point. The first picture needs to be the informative one. That needs to be a close-up of the flowers, of the fruits, of the leaves, close-up of something to help with that suggestion. I mentioned earlier, yeah, we've got elephants here. Yes, we have lovely roses here. Neither one of those are native to our area or are found in the wild. These are the wild critters. These are the ones that are interesting. This is the interesting stuff. And it doesn't have to be native critters. Our lovely henbit over there is not a native plant. Not a native plant. It's one of our winter weeds, but still really informative when we make those observations of it. Almost every time I go outside, I bring my hands with me. And with my hands, I have a built-in scale of my hands. So I will get up close to the plant or the bird, or not necessarily the bird, but to the bug. If it's a roadkill bird, you better believe I'm getting close to that. I'm holding that thing. But this gives me an idea of how big that is. I know that my hands are different size than your hands. But if, in this case, if an orthopterist, if a person that studies grasshoppers wants to know, hey, was that 10 millimeters or 30 millimeters? I can take a ruler and measure that, my finger, those parts of my finger to get that measurement. So, using your hands, great sense of scale. If you're highfalutin, you can bring a ruler out with you. Cool. You can use a standard piece of measurement like that dollar. I actually have a friend, Joey Santor, who has a YouTube channel, Crime Pays, but Botany doesn't. Really interesting guy. On his middle finger, he actually has the metric scale there. But what's pretty bad is if you know anything about tattoos, they fade and they merge and all that stuff. So it's not calibrated anymore. So anyway, if you're way hardcore, I guess you can get a tattoo on your finger like Joey has here. But any way you want to do it, it's good to have some sense of scale on your picture. So the app is one thing. The website is really the beauty. That's where all of, I think, the fun happens. You can upload photos and observations from a camera. So when I'm observing birds, it's way up there. I guess I could put it like on video mode and kind of throw it up there and like hope that I can still frame some of it. But it's hard to get pictures of birds with your phone. So instead, I will use, mine is just a point and shoot camera. So I'm using my point and shoot camera to get pictures of it. I can upload those to the website. You can interact with, you can interact with naturalists from around the world. Like I talk to the Ukrainians and to the Russians with their observations. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. You can go to the website and get some tutorials and videos on how to do things. If you really want to learn, help out people with identifying their unknowns. You don't have to be an expert. And I would argue you probably know more than you think you know on this. If you know it's a plant, if you know it's a bug, if you know it's a fungus, you can still add in those observations, that identification. What some people do is they go out and use the tool and they leave it blank. They leave it totally blank. If you come on and say that's a bird or that's a bug, if that's a grasshopper, it narrows it down so that the people that study grasshoppers can see that. So even a broad identification can be helpful. You can look at species images and list for specific areas. I can look at the species of butterflies that have been observed here at the Botanic Gardens. There's a place for the Botanic Gardens. I can filter for Lepidoptera or butterflies. You can do life list. I don't know how many of y'all are listers. You put a little tag in the mark of where you saw this bird or bug. You can do a life list with iNaturalist too. Oops. So I'm looking at the website here using the filters. I go to Explore, I go to Tarrant County, Texas, and I get the 7,393 species that have been observed within our county. I can take that and I can narrow it down to the beetles. How many beetles can you name? So far, 771 in Tarrant County alone. That's a lot. That is a lot of biodiversity. And I don't mean to personalize it or romanticize it. Maybe I do. I think these beetles are just waiting for you. They're just waiting for you to come take a look. Every day they're showing up. They're showing up right at that flower, just waiting for you to go, or wow, whatever it may be. They're waiting for you to recognize their existence. So 771 species, unique taxon of beetles. Darn it, I should have updated this. I'm sorry. So a couple years each year, we do a City Nature Challenge. This is a global, not competition, participation, a global, some people do competition. Here in Texas, it's definitely a competition of the different species that are found in urban areas. So we did it last year, year before, and the years before that, 7 years, I think, so far. This year before last, I'm sorry I didn't update it. But in 4 days, in April, the end of April, the beginning of May, we documented 3,000 species in 4 days. Wow, neat. I would argue the most important piece of information, what I use, what Rachel uses, what you too can use when you're talking, as we do, talk to the park board, talk to the city manager, talk to city council. There were 1,000 folks that were going out looking at bugs this weekend. Hey, let's change this park from not just being ball fields. Let's leave a little area unmowed for some of us that need wildlife in those areas. It's convincing. It is convincing when you say, hey, these are your voters. This is the constituency here. That's a powerful number. And yeah, looking at the species, we have, they're observed based on, or they're organized based on the frequency of observations. So some of the top ones are the most frequently observed species, not necessarily extravagant stuff. Poison ivy, ladybugs, fox